Hello, occupiers. You need some leadership? I don't know who started this thing. Please listen to this carefully. Hello, America, and whoever's watching or listening. May God bless you and keep you and restore our society back to equitable and sound values and ethics. In the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Today is Tuesday, November 15th, 2011, and today I'd like to communicate support for the principles behind the motivation and beginning for Occupy Wall Street. Even though I do not support the way it has been gone about recently and what I've been hearing with the violence and the lack of sanitation, which is why recently I uploaded a video encouraging any occupiers who may perchance to view it to please go home, because I had believed at that point that they'd extended their welcome and they'd extended the amount of effectiveness that symbolic action of assembling on Wall Street and in various cities had achieved. So I am in support, however, still with the values that started the whole thing. The way I understand it, it seems that Americans claim to not really understand. I don't know if that's selective ignorance or whatever, but it seems that people really don't know what it's all about, or they claim to not know what it's all about. And I believe that I know what it's about, and I agree with it. I believe it's about communicating the principles of economic equity and justice for the good of the country and against corporate greed, the corporate influence on politics, and the corporate practice effects on environment. And these are values and principles conducive with my convictions. However, I have not supported the way it has played out and how people have gone about it. I do, however, support what I recently heard about an element of occupiers in Occupy Wall Street who have decided to transfer their energies from the thing they've been doing, living in a tent city, camping out in a park, and how ugly that's gotten because it's gone on too long, and transferring that energy to go to Washington and do something more concrete about a specific policy change by assembling in Washington for tax reform. I am in solidarity with that. Currently, Congress is deliberating over issues dealing with deficit reduction, which is very much needed, and well, I hope they're thinking about how to bring more revenue into the Treasury to do that. And by November 23rd, I understand that a decision needs to be made, and they're deliberating over that. And one of the issues involved is reforming the tax code. Should we reform the tax code? I think it's a very effective thing for that effort to be transferred, an effort to go and assemble in Washington for affecting that change of policy. And I'm in solidarity with that. Having said that, once again, I feel responsible to communicate how I would like to see it be done, so that I'm not in a position of, you know, being associated with something that goes awry. Okay, so what I would like to see is this element go down, assemble in Washington for tax reform, to reform the tax code to be more equitable, and organize better. Select people for things such as first aid, sanitation, if you're camping in a park, because I really don't know what you're going to do. But if you're still doing that thing and are able to, and be responsible, to be respectful of people's property, and have goodwill amongst each other, and respect each other's person, and obey all the constitutional laws. And if there's any conflict, because the authorities are retaliatory against dissent or something, or, if anything gets ugly, let it be on their part. And you go down there and obey all the constitutional laws and peacefully assemble. From my observation in the American community and listening to things on TV, it'd be good to clearly delineate what your principles and what your purposes are. So I would like to see somebody appointed, or somebody take it upon themselves, or something, to get on some desktop publishing and create some literature that communicates that communicates your principles of reducing corporate greed, or enabling corporate greed, reducing corporate influence on politics, and returning power to the grassroots. Social responsibility for corporations and environmental responsibility for corporations to be, good for the environment, and those are your principles. And then your purpose while you're there, that you stand for this specific policy change for tax reform, and I believe that it should be to close corporate loopholes and end tax breaks for corporations, and write that out. It'd be great to see people, if they're able to or allowed to, or however that works down in Washington, D.C., pass out this literature to congressmen as they walk up the steps. And this would be more effective and more, directly practical than the thing you were doing before that started out to seem valuable to me, of promoting awareness of these principles, but this is actually doing something to affect some change. So I support that as being more effective. Now, I'd like to share some information in support of these principles and for the policy change to end tax breaks for corporations to make the tax code more equitable. Now I am reading from Pittsburgh Tribune Review on Friday, November 4th, 2011. 30 U.S. corporations paid no income taxes. Legal loopholes let them slash 35% tax rate to reap huge benefits. Report by 2 think tanks reveals. From Staff and Wire reports. 30 large and profitable corporations paid no income taxes in 2009 through 2010, said a study on Thursday that arrives as Congress faces rising demands for tax reform that seems unable or unwilling to act. The statutory corporate income tax rate is 35%, one of the highest in the world. But over the 2008 through 2010 period, very few of the companies studied paid it. According to the report, the average effective rate for the companies over the period was 18.5%, said Citizens for Tax Justice and the Institute on Taxation and Economic, both think tanks. Their report also listed General Electric Company, Paccar Incorporated, PG&E Corporation, Computer Science Corporation, Boeing Company, and NiSource Incorporated as among the 30 that paid no taxes for the 3 years. Corporations will say rightly that the loopholes that let them slash their taxes were perfectly legal, the report stated, quote, but that does not mean that low-tax corporations bear no responsibility. The laws were not enacted in a vacuum. They were adopted in response to relentless corporate lobbying, threats, and campaign support, end quote, the report said. Taxes are on the agenda of the Congressional Supercommittee tasked with finding at least $1.2 trillion in additional budget savings by November 23rd. But it is so far deadlocked across a familiar divide. Republicans refusing any tax increases, Democrats defending social programs. On Tuesday, a panel of budget experts warned Supercommittee members that they would fail the country if they did not meet their goal. Financial markets have waited for months for signs that Washington can get its financial house in order, but few have been forthcoming. The report referred to the 1986 tax reform pushed by President Ronald Reagan, who approved the largest corporate tax increase in U.S. history, largely by ending tax breaks, while cutting individual tax rates. Quote, Reagan solved the problem by sweeping away corporate tax loopholes, end quote, said the report, which was co-authored by Citizens for Tax Justice Chief Robert McIntyre. His research 25 years ago played a key role in convincing Reagan that reform was needed. Quote, big business is getting away with taxation murder, end quote, said Frank Knapp, vice chairman of the American Sustainable Business Council, a progressive business coalition. Quote, they pay little or no taxes on massive U.S. profits and then have the gall to lobby for a tax holiday to repatriate profits they have slashed offshore, end quote. Reuters and staff writer Alex Nixon contributed to this report. So there we have it, 30 corporations, big profitable corporations, paid no taxes but actually got refunds through loopholes, even though there may be claims that the tax rate is 35%. I'd also like to add some further comments about this report that I just read. From this report, Citizens for Tax Justice seems to me to be a credible organization to listen to input from, having good ethics about economic equity. Still, its research included information about the Reagan administration that I wasn't hitherto aware of. It was news to me to read in this that Reagan pushed for congressional action in 1986, which countered his supply-side position for most of his administration. I put out a video called "No Super Committee, Supply Side Never Worked," and one of the major points in it, I pointed out that Reagan was a supply-sider and it didn't work because he had accrued a high deficit during his administration. Even though this report points out that he had, other than a supply side, the extreme supply side position that he's had at the beginning of his administration, and through most of it, having relied on something called the Laffer curve, which, if you've ever seen Ferris Bueller's Day Off, you know that that's what it has defined the term voodoo economics or trickle-down economics, which is basically just an excuse for corporations to get lower tax rates than everybody else. I guess I learned from this that in 1986, when Reagan had only 2 more years to go in his second term, that he, at least to a degree, reversed this position. I wasn't aware of that, but that still doesn't invalidate what I said in my video. You know, concisely put, Reagan was very much a supply-sider, and during his administration, we accrued a high deficit. So, I just wanted to stick up for my own material there. You know, it's also true that presidents often get credit for things that happened during their administration that really began in Congress and was caused to happen by Congress. And presidents often get... That's been a frustrating thing for me as an American, is always hearing everything is always credited to the executive of an administration, when we know that, you know, legislation is drafted and created by Congress members. Now, the fact that Reagan may have supported this and pushed for it, as was said, you know, it didn't say that he created it, it said he pushed for it, and that may be true. You know, that could have been due to political expediency and pressure put upon his party to be bipartisan, or some other factor like that, that, you know, he modified his position in that regard, because it's claimed here also that Robert McIntyre from Citizens for Taxation Justice was a big part of persuading Reagan that, well, his supply side positions 6 years into his administration weren't working. Now, how do they solve it? They solve it through closing corporate loopholes and ending tax breaks for corporations. In conclusion, after that supporting information, I think it would be prudent, proper, well, what we need to do, I'll say it authoritatively, what we need to do is we need to end corporate loopholes, and then reform the tax code to even out the tax bracket, the tax code, and even out the tax code among all the brackets, and close the corporate loopholes so that even though the tax rate for corporations right now is 35%, they're not paying that much. And big corporations are actually getting refunds because of loopholes that they have lobbied for and put pressure and threats upon people. And so if people assembled for that policy position, I would be very much in solidarity with it. So whoever has listened to this, thank you for listening. God bless you.